Welcome to Concept Check, the weekly show where we discuss certain ideas and how they relate to esports. Last week, we spoke about first-order optimal strategies, and this week, we will be talking about intrinsic motivation. My name is Shay, and I will be your host. The topic of intrinsic motivation largely applies to all competitive and esports titles, but we'll be discussing Starcraft 2, League of Legends, and DotA in relation to the problems they present when it comes to keeping players motivated. We will later discuss the solutions that CSGO and Hearthstone have put forward in order to circumvent these problems. If you would like to skip straight to the game that most interests you, annotations on the screen or hyperlinks in the description will bring you there. Intrinsic motivation, hereby referred to as IM, is one of the most important concepts of human functionality. Defined simply, IM is the internal feeling that any one person gets to keep moving them forward or pursuing a particular topic. In other words, it is the force that comes from within to keep somebody committed to something. This feeling can be linked with a sense of success, obligation, or fun. Intrinsic motivation is the hardest type of motivation to attain for a variety of reasons. Firstly, it pertains specifically to each individual person's sense of self, so no two people have the exact same IM, even on shared topics. A second reason is that IM is often immaterial, focusing on feelings, drive, or emotions, rather than hard, concrete facts. Finally, IM rarely exists in and of itself and can be diluted by the primary other form of motivation, extrinsic motivation, or EM. EM is a feeling or force to act that is derived from outward sources. For instance, striving to attain good grades in school is extrinsic motivation. The grades are external to any feeling or emotion that drives you forward. While EM is by far the more dominant motivational source, it is much more tenuous than IM. The reason for this is very simple. While IM comes from your personal drive forward, created within you by yourself with your own rationales and emotions, EM is quite arbitrary. A score on the test is a relatively weak metric of knowledge. Moreover, EM is broken easily. Motivation can cease if one begins to feel that the EM is not correlating with effort exerted. I have heard too many times people say things like, "Why study for an exam if I get the same result whether I do or I do not?" Now we come to the idea of extrinsic motivation in esports. Because all of these games have a win condition, where after a certain amount of time you have been successful or have failed, the extrinsic motivation is very clear and seems unarbitrary: to win. I feel as though the primary reason why many people play esports titles is for that sweet high of victory. While that may not be the only reason we play, we are going to be glazing over social aspects and gameplay styles for the purpose of this discussion. Winning motivates us to play more, try harder, and strive for improvement. It gives us a good, sweet feeling that our work and effort are being rewarded. Each game has a different metric for delineating rewards and repercussions for wins and losses. But it all relates to the idea of ELO. ELO is a measurement system that defines relative player skill in competitive games. In other words, it aims to show you how good you are relative to everyone else playing the game. The more wins you acquire, the higher your ELO. By utilizing a matchmaking system that matches you up with people of similar ELO, you should always have a more or less even match. At surface value, this is a necessary and good system for ushering players into their skill category so that they are ensured to play against equally skilled opponents. However, as a system for motivation, it falls flat due to the existence of the converse of victory: defeat. In many games, effort exerted does not have a one-to-one correlation to victory. Many times, you can try your best but lose for a variety of reasons, some of which get increasingly frustrating. Sometimes it feels that everything you did right is devalued because you did one or two things wrong at the wrong time. All the correct decisions mean nothing because one wrong decision lost you the game. Sometimes it feels that the other player or your teammates had an easier time of things or weren't good enough, and that is why you lost the game, by no fault of your own. If a good deal of your motivational input for playing a game is to win, the motivation can very easily fade away or dissipate when you stop winning, just like with grades in school. If you feel as though you are putting in the work but not receiving the appropriate results, frustration, disinterest, or apathy develops. If extrinsic motivation is easy to access but hard to maintain, then intrinsic motivation is hard to access but extremely powerful. In the above school example, if we think of EM as your grades, then IM would be your desire for knowledge or self-improvement. Knowledge is not exactly a quantifiable quality, which proves both a positive and negative in terms of motivation. While the idea that learning can be an endless process that carries on forward can keep people going, the lack of any clear-cut goals may inhibit people's desire or have them looking for more quantifiable properties, such as grades. People seem to inherently want to have very solid and rigorous proof of their effort rather than seemingly nebulous properties such as progress or knowledge accruement. In general, the higher the pressure in any given situation, the more motivation is needed to keep up with the activity. Human beings tend to avoid stress and negative emotions, so if there is a high price for failure, either emotionally or physically, then the strong motivational forces are needed to keep moving forward. Now that we have a good idea of IM and EM, let's look at how we can minimize our reliance on EM in esports and maximize our IM in games. In which games it's done right, and in which games it's done wrong. In the simplest possible terms, games that promote IM try to encourage improvement over victories, while games that promote EM put all their focus on victories to the exclusion of all else. Feel free to hit the annotation to skip to your game now. Starcraft 2 is perhaps the worst example of doing EM versus IM all wrong. The term ladder anxiety stemmed from this game, and as the most common cited reason for people's loss in interest in Starcraft 2. The game seems to be too hard or not rewarding enough or frustrating to play to many players. Starcraft 2 is unarbitrarily the most difficult of all esports titles, and it has a few other negative qualities when it comes to motivation. Firstly, the game is entirely in your hands. If you lose, it is entirely your fault that you lost. There are no allies, no randomness, or no happenstance that you can blame other than yourself. This is one of the big reasons StarCraft 2 has such a forcefully negative outlook on FOOS, First Order Optimal Strategies, as discussed last week. Secondly, the game is built up of thousands of second-to-second decisions that streamline the game to a certain point. However, because of this incredibly difficult aspect of StarCraft 2, a single mistake after 100 victories can often leave you at a loss. Every Terran knows the feeling of losing to 2 Storms after pushing a Protoss back for 20 minutes. Every Zerg has lost all their Banes to a good Widowmine shot. Every Protoss has momentarily forgot about the possibility of a muta switch from a Zerg player. Thirdly, and what will be the focus of the rest of this discussion, Blizzard has a terrible system for inherently motivating players to keep playing. You have a ladder that is a terrible show of your own skill, but a great show of where you stand against everyone else. If we look back to ELO, Blizzard has effectively stripped away one half of the equation, showing how good people are by themselves, and put all the focus on their relative ranking to other players. The reason this cannibalizes people's motivation is because this system is extremely ambiguous. I'm currently a top 25 Masters Terran, and I play GMs and top Masters frequently. My MMR or ELO is high, but this is not represented in my ladder rank. I'll get extremely frustrated when I lose to somebody who is a higher rank than me, and I'll lose 24 points because I'm favored. This is a great way of devaluing the feeling of being a Masters or a Diamond or a Plat player. Day9 once said that we should view ladder rank as one progress in the game rather than one's actual skill. While this is a great idea, it's nearly impossible because of the ambiguous nature of ladder rank and MMR. I can be playing a better game at a lower rank and a higher MMR than I played at a higher rank and lower MMR. This stems from the fact that MMR and points on ladder are relatively disjointed. For example, let's say that I have X amount of points on ladder. If I start losing lots of games, my ladder ranking will fall, but my MMR will fall significantly faster, exacerbated if I have bonus pool. I'll start playing against people with equally low MMR and I'll start winning again. My rank will rise above where it started by the point I get to the same MMR. I might be happy and motivated that I'm rank 3 Diamond, but the longer that I maintain that high rank without getting promoted because my MMR was low from the loss streak, the less I feel like playing. Each individual victory that provides all my EM means less. Unfortunately, Blizzard's greatest mistake in forming this ladder system was to make it seem entirely arbitrary, a problem that was exacerbated by consistent numbers problems in Masters League. Everybody wants that star, but now Masters at top 2% means way more than it did when it was at top 8%. A lack of unranked mode at release of Wings of Liberty, as long as with a slew of other functionality problems, hampered people's ability to strip away rank and only play for improvement as well. Moreover, the Heart of the Swarm implementation of levels did not matter significantly enough to allow people to feel as though they were making any significant progress and gaining a sense of I am. So, how do we solve this crisis level problem in Starcraft 2, pushing people away from 1v1 ladder, in which forms the crux of competitive gaming? While there is no clear answer, I always look back to Warcraft 3 in terms of proper implementation of IM over EM. In War 3, you had a level system in which each win would grant experience, while each loss would subtract a less amount of experience. People's levels were roughly correlated to their position on the ladder, but without exact league or division numbers, it was just easier for people to feel as though their levels related to their personal journey through the game. Added to this, you had automated tournaments that would start according to your skill level and be placed in brackets that correlated with you, granting you not only the ability to track the progress competitively, but also to gain tournament-specific awards like badges or icons. People would use ladder for what Day 9 effectively said it should be used for, a track of progress and skill that allowed them to play in competitive but low-pressure environments weekly. Moreover, season resets would involve level resets as well, so people got to climb up again, feeling that rush of IM progression. Hearthstone. Off the heels of a game that really let down the idea of intrinsic motivation, Starcraft 2, Hearthstone has been more successful in allowing people to feel as though they are improving, rather than focusing solely on the victory aspect of the game. While Blizzard did fix their approach in several ways, we must firstly note the importance of the major way that Hearthstone differs from Starcraft 2. In Hearthstone, there's an element of chance or luck present. Because of this, it is simply impossible to win every single game you play. Sometimes you will have a poor draw, end of story. Because of this, it takes so much pressure and stress off the game you're playing, because you know that any moment you could lose entirely because of luck and through no fault of your own. This creates a much lower pressure environment for people playing the game. Because of this, Blizzard has had much more leeway in designing a game with much more unforgiving statistics. The randomness associated with draws means everything can be big, powerful, awesome, and most importantly, fun to play for everyone. Aligning this mechanic with the retooling of the old idea of constructed versus draft, Blizzard created the arena, which again takes away the stress from the player because of the inherent randomness in creating your own deck. However, the arena also serves as a great IM system in and of itself. Let's say you get a really bad draft. Suddenly, the pressure of getting the best score, a form of EM, is off, and you're just pushing yourself to play every game as best as you can. You still strive for a good score, but the primary motivation behind the game is to make the best of a bad situation. Fun arena games such as all high pick or all low pick maximize your ability to rely on your own skill in the progression as opposed to being overly reliant on a score. Constructed, on the other hand, tries to solve the problem of IM by creating a ladder where you are mostly being based on your performance around your climb, rather than around other people's rank in relation to yours. Win streaks are unsustainable because of the randomness factor, but feel great, and the slow ramp up in number of stars required to make the next rank feels like a difficulty curve gone right. Finally, it's clear where you stand and exactly what you have to do in order to get to the high point, Legend. You are using EM by saying, I want to get 50 stars so I can hit rank 5, and compound that with the IM of, in order to do that, I need to learn more about the game, get better at deck building, and find a way to have a good in-game decision making. And the beauty of design in Hearthstone is that as soon as you hit that point of IM, Blizzard has very clear ways of providing you with bits and pieces that will fuel your internal motivation. I need to build a new and better deck. Let's buy a few packs so we have something more to play around with. I need to know how to make use of my cards better. Let's do a few arena runs and try to improve with new wonky deck lists. I need to be able to understand synergy more. Let's draft a few decks in arena and then buy a few packs to try out in constructed. These are all things that I've heard people say when motivated about Hearthstone. In other words, Blizzard is giving you avenues to unleash your motivation in Hearthstone through monetary payments. It is a very elegant system that's available for those who want it, but not necessary for those who would rather read and learn through less hands-on methods. League of Legends, DotA. At first glance, it might be hard to imagine why two of the most popular competitive games in the world might struggle with motivating their players to play, and truthfully, in many ways, they do not. The reason League of Legends or Dota do not fall in the same trap that Starcraft 2 did was because they offered a plethora of other and introductory game modes to buffer people and allow them to learn before they were forced to do the dreaded ladder. You do not have to ever play a ranked game of LoL and still have a full and fun experience with the game. And the same goes for Dota 2. Relatively few people who play these games ever commit fully to the same ranked game mode that is required in Starcraft 2, and they flourish for it. By taking the great onus off of ranked play, people in the game might be motivated to play for the reasons that are important to them, i.e., they're intrinsically motivated to play. Be it motivation to play with friends, motivation to experience a fun game, motivation to improve without the pressure of winning or losing, etc. Certain game modes introduce randomness, and it works in the same way but to a lesser degree as it does in Hearthstone. By draining some of the stress from playing the game, people build up their IM to a point where they feel ready to jump into ranked. But for all the good that League of Legends and Dota do to build their player base to a point where they're intrinsically motivated enough to play ranked games, they do little to fix the Starcraft 2 issue of ranked games being a stressful, toxic, and often negative experience. While Starcraft 2 derives a huge amount of pressure from the fact that it is wholly your fault if you win or lose, League of Legends and Dota take the pressure off by introduction of 4 teammates. In a perfect world where those teammates cooperate, the game would be much less stressful and much more enjoyable to play. Everyone would take a little pressure off of their EM to win and focus on their IM to enjoy the game, contribute, and get better. However, as has been proven again and again, emotion gets in the way and people can get very negative in these games. People start getting frustrated and a culture of negativity is born and propagated. Once more people are toxic, other people grow toxic, and this creates circumstances where the stress of playing and the focus on EM and ranked play coincides with the toxicity of the community, and people start to lose their intrinsic motivation. The fun decreases, the frustration from being yelled at makes it harder to want to improve, and the social aspect ebbs away. While both League of Legends and Dota suffer from the same toxicity, the nature of the negativity I find is very different. Where I find LoL to be rather abrasive and overtly in your face, I felt Dota to be much less accepting of newbiness or unknowing plays. There are many circumstances in Dota where a language barrier prevents a good game from being played out as well, and frustration is proliferated. Because these games are taking relatively few precautions to make their rank play as accessible as stress-free as other modes, their toxicity and stress build up to prevent many people from ever entering ranked modes. Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Once upon a time, CS was the golden boy of team games, and in my opinion, while it cannot rival the popularity of the above team games, it still has the best setup. It still has the best setup for intrinsically motivating their players without relying on luck or non-ranked game modes. That's not to mention that CSGO doesn't have its own game modes. It has a plethora, and they serve as an even bigger function as compared to the mobile games, simply because of their diversity. Where LoL regularly introduces new game modes and swiftly takes them away, they all focus on the standard MOBA play style. In CSGO, you have very different games with very different objectives, maps, etc. But back to competitive CSGO, which again, in my opinion, is the best competitive game mode of any of the big esports titles. I've encountered relatively little toxicity, more teamwork, funner atmospheres, more apologetic people when they're doing poorly, etc. in competitive CSGO than in any other game. Why? Firstly, CSGO is a true team game. Where MOBAs start in relatively solo or 2v2 manner, CSGO is a game where your entire team must move as a unit at all times for the terrorists, or have immaculate communication to counteract their spread for the counter-terrorists. While one player can come through in the clutch, the majority of rounds are won off of good positioning, good communication, and good teamwork. This leads to the second idea. Because you will not single-handedly win 16 rounds for your team, you need to cooperate and work with your teammates. You will gain nothing from being angry or toxic, and in 9 out of 10 cases, you cannot hyper-carry to make up for poor teamwork. By being forced to be a good teammate, you make the atmosphere and the attitude lighter, encouraging everyone to try their best for the team, rather than for the score. Next, in order to proliferate good teamwork, competitive matches have functionality to instantly maim anyone being toxic by kicking them. Because CSGO comprises of 30 short 2-minute rounds, any player that is being too abrasive can get kicked by a simple vote, and he is replaced, and even if by a bot. Another big thing that helps CSGO remain nice is the emphasis placed on voice chat. Just as a simple act of hearing another human voice and speaking with your own greatly diminishes the propensity that many people have to rage mindlessly. A little bit of humanity is donated back to the land of pixels. Finally, while games such as Starcraft 2, League of Legends, or Dota all have placement matches, CSGO runs their placements differently. Rather than basing your rank of a win-loss of a set number of games, you simply have to win 10 games to be ranked. While this still considers win-loss, it is a simple change, first to 10 rather than a win-loss after 10, makes the game seem kinder and more lenient, and provides a nicer streamline for people that want to start playing ranked modes, something that all other games are lacking. One final thought on IM and EM will be focused on a more game developer or mentality point of view. In many games, ranked mode is so abrasive and hard to get into because the game designers put relatively little thought into eliminating stress and other negativities from it. This seems to be because of the mentality that people who are playing ranked are already motivated to try and be one of the best, and they are heavily committed to the game. The idea that little cushioning or stress reduction is needed in ranked play because it is a high-level competitive system is frankly stupid, but very pervasive in society. Many exams in school are brutal and turn the stress up seemingly to try to make the exam seem more important or life or death. While I think that mentality might be cool in the highest levels of professional play because it exacerbates tension and makes good for the audience, at a level that most of us play, this can be the death knell for our enthusiasm. Recently, I ran a marathon. It wasn't hard to motivate myself to run, it was hard to motivate myself to keep running because exhaustion was setting in. During the race, the amount of volunteers standing by the sidelines and cheering the runners increased as the race grew deeper. People who quit games often simply get frustrated by how brutal ranked play is over a period of time. By trying to ease not only the barrier to entry, by cushioning the experience in general, it might make IM easier to achieve. My name has been Shay, and this has been Concept Check. If you have enjoyed this show, feel free to subscribe and spread the word. Tweet at me with future show suggestions if you have any. Take care.